Tohoros. Test Zion. If he wanted to take from them enough for one press or for two presses, Beis Shammai says he may cut in tuma. He may cut in tuma, but must cover in tahara. Beis Hillel says he may even cover in tuma. Rabbi Yossi says he may dig with metal spades and bring to the pressing house in tuma. If a dead sheretz was found in the mill, only the place where it touched is tamei. If there is liquid floating, everything is tamei. And if the dead sheretz was found on top of the leaves, you should ask the presses if they can say we did not touch. If a dead sheretz was touching the compressed mass, even by a hair, it's tamei. If the dead sheretz was found on top of chunks and is touching the volume of an egg, it's tamei. And there were chunks on top of chunks, then even if it is touching the volume of an egg, only the place that it touches tamei. If it was found between the wall and the olives, they are tahor. And if it was found on the roof, the olives in the holder are tahor. If it was found in the holder, the olives on the roof are tamei. And if it was found on burnt on the shelves, then similarly in the case of a single garment, it is tahor. For all cases concerning tuma, follow the time at which they were found.
Okay, and that last sentence is summarizes basically the whole Mishnah. And while I was reading it yesterday, I was just thinking, but we learned this already before, that all tumah is as it is at the time that it's found. You don't have to assume that it was anywhere else before now. So that just bore out in the last sentence of the Mishnah, that you don't have to look further back or start wondering about what if. Okay. And Hanoel base habad mipnei habadadin. Okay, so here's our scenario. The owner of the oil press is a chaver, and he's hired a whole bunch of Amei Haaretz to come and press his olives. Okay, now again to restate the position of Amei Haaretz, they're not bad people. They're not looking to mess things up. They're just ignorant. Okay, so what did he do? He made sure that the Amei Haaretz were tahor, i.e., they went to mikveh, and now the next day they've come to the press, and now they are they're ready to work. Okay, so and what did he do? What does he do just to make sure that nobody comes in or out and brings any tumah? He locks the door. Okay. I don't know if that would be an acceptable employment practice these days, to lock the door on your employees, but okay, that's what he did to prevent any tumah coming in or out. And then he walks away, and then an hour later he slaps himself on the forehead and says, "Oh my gosh, there was a cloth. I remember now, there was a cloth inside there that was tamei midras." Okay, so there was a cloth in there that somebody sat on, that a zav or a niddah sat on, and now the cloth is a midras. So now he realizes that this has happened, and there was a mosquito just flying around in front of me, and I actually caught it. So now he realizes that this cloth was in there, and now he's got to worry about what happened to the Amei Haaretz who were in the press. Did they step on it? Because even if they stepped on it, they're going to become tamei. Okay, or even if they just moved it, they're going to become tamei. Okay, because Hesed also makes come from a midras makes a person tamei.
They couldn't even use a stick to move it. Like take a stick in the hand and then move it, because
that's correct. Even moving a stick, he's going to become tamei. Okay, so now, what Rabbi Meir says, Beis habad tamei. That's it. You can't. You've got to be choshesh that our Amei Haaretz are going to make everything inside their tamei. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Beis habad tahor. He says, no, you don't know that anything happened. You can assume that the Amei Haaretz were careful, and that they didn't touch anything that they didn't know was tahor. So why do you need to assume that anything went wrong? Rabbi Shimon Omer im tahorim lahen beis habad tamei. In other words, if the Amei Haaretz thought that the cloth was tahor, then that's it. Then you must assume that it's tamei. And if they thought that it was tamei, beis habad tahor, then you can rely on them being careful to avoid the tumah, and then it will remain tahor. Amar Rabbi Yossi, he comes and injects some logic into the situation. He says, "Chimepni ma tameos." What's the reasoning that we make everything tame when it comes to amei aretz? Ele she'ein amei aretz bekiin beheset. So it's not because they're not uh, it's not because they're going to willingly go and make things tame. It's because they're ignorant. Okay, they don't know the subtle halachas of heset of midrash. So amei aretz just think that you can only become tame from touching something. They're not aware that if you just move something without even touching it, you can become tame. So even if they knew it was tame, he's saying so he's basically saying this to Rabbi Shimon. It doesn't matter. Even if they knew it was tame, it's probably some bright guy will say, you know what? Let me just take a stick and move it into the corner, and it'll be out of our way. And then shkoyach, now he's tame. Okay, so that's so basically Rabbi Yossi's coming and agreeing with Rabbi Meir. And is there do we say the halacha in here? Usually, when you have a machlokes between Tanaim and Rabbi Yossi's in there, we usually paskin like Rabbi Yossi. He's but I don't see any explicit psaka over here. Anyway, comes the next case here, Mishnah base. Habadadin shehayu nichnasim v'yotzin. Okay, so now you have people who are working in the olive press who are coming and going from the place of the from the press. So they're walking all around umashkin tmein besoch beis habad. And you later discover that there's some tamei liquid on the floor of the work area. Okay, so now we assume that they're walking barefoot. If they're wearing shoes, you're in big trouble. Because we've seen this before, that the shoes, it's one of these cases where that which made you tame could not make me tame, but you've made me tame, right? So because the liquids, if the liquid touches the shoe, then the shoe becomes tame, and then the person who's in the shoes now becomes tame. Okay, so that would be a problem. But if you're barefoot, tame liquids can only make a person tame through his hands, not through his feet. So if he's walking barefoot, he himself does not become tame. The only problem is if he is dragging that tame liquid into the place where the olives are being pressed. So that's why it says in the Mishnah over here, if there's enough of a gap between the tame liquid and the actual olive press that his feet would become dry just from walking on the floor, then that's fine. No problems here. Okay, but if not, mashma, then you got a problem, because now you're dragging tame liquids into the oil, and that's going to make the oil tame. Habadarin v'habotrin shenim tuma lifnehen. Okay, so whether they're olive press or whether they're working in the wine press, and there's a tuma, and we find a tuma inside the work area. Nemanim lomar, we believe them to say lo naganu. And this is talking about a tumah that's not a midrash, because as Rabbi Yossi pointed out in the previous midrash, they don't know the laws of Heset. But if it's a tumah that's not a midrash, like a tumas mace, something okay, that is not that will only convey tumah by touching. So then the Badadin are believed to say lo naganu. No, we didn't touch that. We trust them that much, even if they're Amei Aretz, to say that they didn't touch it. And also children. If let's say their children come to greet them at lunchtime or whatever, now the chashash about children is that their neder mothers pick them up. So if the neder mother picks them up, then immediately they become an avatuma. Right. Just like them, and then they come and touch the father, and the father now becomes a rishon. Right. So we believe them that they didn't touch their children again. Yotzim chutz lepesach beis habad. Okay, now what happens if they need to go to the bathroom? So they go out the exit of the press, and uponim la'achari gader, and they can walk out to behind the fence to go and pee in private. Okay, and that's fine. We don't have to suspect that they're going to become tamei just because they walk behind the fence to go and relieve themselves. Ad kama yarchiku v'yu tohorin, but what's the measure of this? How far can they go to the bathroom before you have to worry that they're going to become tamei without not being supervised? As long as the owner, who's the chaver, as long as the chaver can observe them and see that they haven't walked out of eye distance, that's still beseder. Mishna Gimel, habadadin v'habotzrin. So once again, the olive presses and the wine presses. Kedei kevan shehichnisan lirishus amara. Now this is taking a step back. This is before they come into the actual work area. The owner needs to make sure that they go to mikveh in order to press everything. So he has to escort them to the mikveh, which in our case is typically a cave. They didn't have all those nice, beautiful buildings with the filtered water and whatever. If you had the mikveh is typically a cave. Okay. So once as long as he escorts them to the entrance, sees that they go in, Dayo diver Rabbi Meir. He says, Rabbi Meir, you don't need to watch them toivel. You can trust them to say we toiveled. Rabbi Yossi Omer tzarich lamod aleihen ad sheyitbolu. Now, he has to supervise them. He has to actually watch them going into the mikveh, submerging themselves, making sure that they're doing this properly, because maybe they're not so bucky in halachas of chatzitza, and you've got to make sure that they do it properly. Rabbi Shimon Omer, im tahorin lahin, if they think they themselves are tahor, tzarich la'amod aleihem ad sheyitbolu, because they're gonna think, I'm already tahor, why do I need to bother going to mikveh? Let me just go, I'll just walk into the cave, I don't feel like getting into the cold water. I'll stay here and pretend that I've been to mikveh, and I'll come out because I'm tahor anyway, what do I care? Im tmein lahin, however, if they recognize that they're themselves, that they're tameh, then they don't need to then you don't need to supervise them, you can just trust them. However, the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi. Now, what's the Kahati adds a little footnote over here. Why you have to look at Rabbi Meir and understand, why does Rabbi Meir think that you can trust them? Isn't it like, doesn't he also agree that they're not halacha, that they're not bakiyim in the halachas of Tevila and the Chatzitza? So the reason for Rabbi Meir, you have to say, is that just like we believe Amei Haaretz, we believe the wives of Amei Haaretz when they go to mikveh. Okay, even though they're not learned and whatever, and they don't know the halachas of chatzitza, but they're allowed to live with their wives. Why? Because okay, so the reason being is that even chatzitza, me'ikar adin, midoraisa, a chatzitza, in order to invalidate a tevila, has to both be something that covers rov guf and something that you might put on that you wouldn't want. So halachas of chatzitza midoraisa are actually very lenient, because you basically have got to have fallen into a vat of paint and then go to mikveh for that to be really a chatzitza. Midrabanan, we're machmir on both. Either if it covers most of your body, or if it's something that you're makpid on, we say we're machmir on that. So we say, okay, but for Amei Haaretz, the worst case is that, okay, midrabanan, they messed up, but me'ikar adin, it'll still actually be tahor. So we say the same. So says Rabbi Meir, the same thing goes for the Beis Abad. If you can trust them, if you can trust their wives to go to mikveh, you can trust them to go to mikveh. If there's a chatzitza, no, it's not covering most of your body. You would have seen if they're covering most of their body. So we let it be. Okay. Everyone else is more machmir on that. Okay.
Okay. Zion Dalet. If the wife of a kaver left the wife of an Amaretz grinding in her house, if the mill stopped, everything in the house is tamei. If the mill did not stop, nothing in the house is tamei except for those items in the area that she can stretch out her hand and touch. If there were two women, then in either case, everything in the house is tamei, since one grinds and one examines. These are the words of the mayor. But the comments say nothing in the house is tamei except for those items in the air that they can stretch out their hand and touch. If someone leaves an Amaretz in the house to guard it, when he can see those who enter and those who leave, the food, the drink, and open earthenware vessels are tame. But the beds, seats, and sealed certain earthenware vessels are tahor. But if you cannot see those who enter or those who leave, even if the Amar's guard has to be carried, or even if he's bound, everything is tame. If the tax collectors enter into the house, everything in the house is tame. If there is an idolater with them, they are believed to say, "We have not entered," but they are not believed to say, "We have entered and we have not touched." If thieves entered into a house, nothing in the house is tame except for those items in the area where the thieves walk. And what do they remember tame? The food, the drinks, the open earthenware vessels. But the bed, seats, and sealed earthenware vessels are tahor. And if there's an idolater or woman with him, everything in the house is tame.
Okay. Para. Tesvav.
Okay. Regarding mekatos and katos ashes, one may not transport them across a river in a boat, nor may he float them on the surface of the water, nor may he stand on the side of the river and throw them to the other side, but he may cross the river with water up to his neck. One who is tata for katos purposes may cross the river with an empty vessel that is tata for katos in his hands and with unconsecrated water. Concerning valid ashes that became mixed with ashes from a stove, we follow the majority with regard to conveying tumah, but we not consecrating metatos with the mixture. If Eliezer says we may consecrate metatos with all of the mixture. Regarding metatos that became disqualified, it renders tame someone who is tahor through tumura, truma, through contact with his hands or on his body. But with respect to someone who is tahor for katos, it renders him tame neither through contact with his hands or through contact with his body. If the mekatos became tame, it rendered tame. I'm sorry.
Sorry, okay, carry on. Yes, carry on.
I skipped page. If the mekatos became tame, it renders tame one who is tahor for truma through contact with his hands or body. And with respect to someone who is tahor for katos, it renders him tame through contact with his hands, but not through contact with his body.
Okay.
And
Tohoros.
okay, Aleph. There are items that spread tumah and act as barrier against tumah, items that spread tumah but do not act as barrier against tumah, items that act as barriers against tumah but do not spread tumah, and items that do not spread tumah but do not act as barriers against tumah. These spread tumah and act as barriers against tumah: a chest, a box, a cabinet, a large straw basket, a large reed basket, and the water tank of an Alexandrian ship. If they have flat bottoms, they can contain 40 saw of liquid, which is 2 cores of dry measure. A curtain, a work apron, a bed cover, a sheet, matting on a mat. If they have been made into a bed, a herd of animals, whether it's called non-kosher or kosher, lives of wild animals, and nests of birds. A bird that is nesting and one who makes a place for her son among the stalks, the iris, the kisum, kamor, greens, the gray Greek gourd, and the food that remains tahor. Renokan and Nori disagrees concerning food that remains tahor, except for the pressed cake of figs. The following items also spread tumah and act as barriers against tumah: ledges, balconies, dovecotes, overhanging boulders and rocks, windows for light, sharp rocks, and branch canopies, and protrusions that appear that support light plasterwork. These are the words of Rameya. The common saying medium plasterwork, which are branch canopies, a tree that overhangs the ground, and what is the protrusion? Hedges that extend out from a fence. Okay.
One more.
All right, those items spread tumah but do not act as barriers against tumah: a chest, a box, a cabinet, a large straw basket, a large reed basket, and the water tank of an Alexandrian ship, if they do not have flat bottoms or if they do not contain 40 saw of liquid, which is 2 quarts of dry measure, a curtain, a work apron, a bed cover, a sheet, matting, and a mat, if they have not been made into tents. The carcass of a domestic animal or wild animal, and food that can become tummy.
Okay.
Tohoros. Okay. Yud Bet Aleph. Milk offerings and libation offerings which have become contaminated with tumah before they were sanctified in a vessel, they can be redeemed, and once they were sanctified in a vessel, they cannot be redeemed. Birds, wood, frankincense, and sacred vessels cannot be redeemed, for it only says an animal. If one says, "I take upon myself to bring a mikvah offering in a Shabbos," and he brought it in a Malach Shabbos, or he said in a Malach Sheshes, and he brought it in a Malach Shabbos, which he has brought, which has filled his obligation, but he has not fulfilled his obligation. If he said this is to be brought in a Shabbos, and he brought it in a Sheshis, or he said it in a Sheshis and he brought it in a Shabbos, it is invalid. I take upon myself to bring 2 Esrorim in 1 vessel, and he brought them in 2 vessels, and he said in 2 vessels, and he brought them in 1 vessel. What has he brought? He has brought what he has not fulfilled his obligation. If he said times, these are to be brought in 1 vessel, and he brought them in 2 vessels, and he said in 2 vessels, and he brought them in 1 vessel, they are invalid. If he said, I take upon myself to bring 2 Esronim in 1 vessel, and he brought them in 2 vessels, and he said to him, you vowed to bring them in 1 vessel. If he brought them in 1 vessel, they are valid. In 2 vessels, they are invalid. If he said, I take upon myself to bring 2 Esronim in 2 vessels, and he brought them in 1 vessel, and they said to him, you vowed to bring them in 2 vessels. If he brought them in 2 vessels, they are valid. If he placed them in 1 vessel, it is like 2 mincha offerings which were mixed together. If he said, I take upon myself to bring a mincha offering from barley, he must bring one from wheat. If he said coarse flour, he must bring fly flour. Without oil and without frankincense, he must bring it with oil and frankincense. Half an isaron, he must bring an isaron. An isaron and a half, he must bring 2. Reb Shimon exempts him because he does not donate in the manner of those who donate.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And we go on to Nazir. Okay. Gimel Aleph. Someone who said Amen Nazir shaves his head on the 31st day. But if he shaved on the 30th day, he has discharged his obligation. If he said I'm a Nazir for 30 days, if he shaved on the 30th day, he has not discharged his obligation. Someone who declared 2 terms in Nazirus shaves for the first on day 31 and for the second on day 61. But if he slaved for the first on day 30, he slaves for the second on day 60. And if he saved on day 60 minus 1, he has discharged his obligation. And this testimony was attested by Reb Papias about someone who declared 2 terms in Nazirus that if he shaved for the first day on the 30, then he shaved for the second on the 60. But if he saved on the 60 minus 1, he has discharged his obligation because day 30 is reckoned for him in account of the second term. Someone who said, I'm a Nazir, if he became tummy on day 30, he forfeits all. Reb Eliezer says he forfeits only 7. If he said, I am a Nazir on 30 days, if he became tummy on the day 30, he forfeits all.
Okay. And
And
Orla.
Okay. Olive Zion. Leaves, young sprouts, the sacks of vines and vine buds are permitted in respect to Orla and Revi and to a Nazareth and are forbidden in Asherah. If Yossi says vine beds are forbidden because they are fruit. If Eliot says if one curdles milk with the sap of Orla, it is forbidden. If Yeshua said, I heard it expressly that if one curdles with the sap of leaves or the sap of roots, it is permitted with the sap of unripe fruit, it is forbidden because it becomes as a fruit. Defective grapes, grape kernels, grape husk, and the wine made from these, the skin of the pomegranate and the sprout, nut shells, and fruit stones are forbidden on account of Orla. In Asherah and to a Nazarite, they're permitted, but in respect of Revi, fallen unripe fruit of all are forbidden. Yossi says one may plant a shoot of Orla, but one may not plant a nut of Orla because it is fruit, and one may not grant early date berries of Orla. Okay.
Okay, and that's it. And Chodesh Tov.
So enjoy. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Hashem.
Bye. Bye.